Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today joined by officially, like this is it may have been a conversation in the past. It was, on your second appearance, you became a good friend of the show. Now you're a Lakers Lounge global ambassador, Leigh Ellis. Thank you very much for hopping on with us. It's
Always,
always a pleasure.
yeah, always fun talking with you too, Anthony. And I think we have talked about it in the past. My first team that I followed was the Lakers. I grew up. I've got posters from the 87, 88 Lakers. I've got correspondence I received. I've got team photos. James Worthy was my favorite player, my first favorite player. So to be chatting with you right now is great. And in the background, you might be able to see it there. This is
Okay.
this is from
It's
the
a
court.
Kobe back.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
from the court in Boston, which is a suburb of Istanbul in Turkey, which I'm working on a little feature from, where they painted the whole court in honor of Kobe after his passing, of course. But this was the court that he opened in 2011, and it was a
Wow.
huge deal. So that court I got to play on last year holds huge significance for the people of I mean, not just Istanbul and Boston, but Turkey. Kobe was absolutely adored there, as he was pretty much everywhere around the world. And so to get to play on a court that held meaning like that was a really fun experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I live in a suburb about 30 minutes north of Austin. And if I drive into the city of Austin proper, about 15 minutes or so from my house off to the side of the freeway, there's a Kobe and Gigi mural, like off to the side of the freeway in Austin. The reach there and the impact of his passing and her passing and all that is insane. That in Texas they hate like all of my neighbors hate the Lakers, like
Yeah.
all of them. I live around a bunch of Spurs fans, bunch of Mavs fans. They all hate the Lakers, but yeah, that's great. You mentioned James Worthy. I haven't told the story on the pod, so I'll make it quick because I saw that you did the steam room with Ernie and Chuck, and podcasting with like old NBA players is always kind of a fun experience. James Worthy, they used to do for Spectrum, they used to do a blogger night where they would invite. This is at the beginning of basically Spectrum's Lakers coverage. They would invite bloggers in and they would ask us to, write something up about the experience and everything that they're offering Lakers fans on that channel and yada, yada, yada. We got to sit in and watch a game basically with the studio staff that was in that day. And James was always there. Obviously, Geeter was always there. And one of the times that I was there, I got to sit next to Caron Butler, had a great time there as well. At the beginning, though, I didn't do much writing at the time. I said, the only way that I'm going to get any value of this, or you're going to get any value out of me, is to have these people on my show. And they said, great. You can we'll just set you up in an office and we'll have people cycle through and you can have everybody on there. And apparently it seemed like the PR person that I was working with had told James Worthy that he was going to be talking on a podcast. The thing is, though, I think he thinks to this day my name is Podcast because I walked in. Maybe not now because podcasts are so much more popular.
Right.
This was a few years ago.
Right.
I walk in, there's this cavernous hall, and it's this all cemented away. And James Worthy, this, has this deep booming voice. He's at the other end of the hallway. He sees me, and I have my equipment that I'm getting set up in the other room. He sees me from down the hall. He goes, "Yo, podcast."
It's a real McLovin story right there, isn't it?
It's great. Yeah. But I wanted to ask about the experience doing the steam room with Ernie and Chuck. That was, I saw that and I was just like blown away. That was incredible.
I'm still kind of on a high from it, to be honest, because, for me to be sitting there between two Hall of Famers and they were interviewing me was a really surreal experience. I mean, I've known Charles, especially from my early NBA fandom, which started in the mid to late 80s there. And so I've known all about his career, you know, his time in Philadelphia and the frustrations going up against the Bulls. He gets traded to Phoenix. He faces the Bulls in the finals. They can't win a home game. They just win one home game. Maybe they win the championship. But, you know, so to be sitting there with him, and then Ernie, of course, his standing amongst the sports media broadcasters, not just in the basketball world, I think in America, I think Ernie's up there in that elite category with, you know, the Bob Costases and the Dodgers broadcaster. His name escapes me. Right? Mm-hmm. Vince Scully, that's the one. Yeah, you know, those sorts of legendary names. And so it was amazing. I mean, I was on there for probably 45 minutes or so. I could have been talking for 2 or 3 hours with those guys, because that's the thing, especially with you know, Ernie. Not that Charles has it either, but there's no ego there. Ernie's there talking to you like we're talking right now, and Charles is always great because he doesn't ever afraid. He's never dodged a question in his life. He'll answer it. He'll say whatever he wants, and that sort of sincerity and that authenticity makes those conversations just so enjoyable. And I just, you know, it's one of those moments when we were wrapping up, I was like, guys, I've got another hour here, easy. Let's just keep going, you know. And I sort of wanted to turn it around and say, all right, now I've got some questions for you, Charles. And so anyway, in the end, we talked about him coming to Australia this year, and it remains to be seen if he'll follow through on that. But I can say that I'm working diligently to make that happen. And people in Australia have been lining up already saying, listen, it's not a matter of interest or money, or if Charles wants to come, if we can get him on that plane, it's going to be huge. So fingers crossed. I mean, I should find out probably in the next, you know, 3 or 4 weeks if it is actually going to go ahead. I've got a few people working behind the scenes to try to make it happen, but we'll see. So it'd be just an incredible sort of life achievement for me if I'm able to sort of instigate Charles going to Australia to do a couple of live shows, and hopefully I'll be a part of it myself.
Yeah, I mean, show him to a golf course in a casino, and I think your chances are pretty good. Like,
see, that's it, and that's what makes Charles so great. Is everyone knows it's like it wouldn't take much. And you know, he'll be going to Sydney, he'll be going to Melbourne, some of the best golf courses in Australia.
Yeah, I was just going to say, golf in Australia is incredible.
We stay at the casino so he can gamble and have a drink. He'll be staying in a nice place. It's, you know, the only thing is the flight to get out there is obviously kind of tough. But even for that, he's not going to be sitting in coach, you know, and doing the 4 stops to get to Australia. It's like, you know, Los Angeles, Sydney, first class, 15 hours. It's a little easier to manage than, you know, being a backpacker in your 20s trying to get around.
Yep, I would imagine so. Leigh Ellis, you've been, you know, working diligently. I've seen on your profiles on social that you are now 18 of 20 cities. The project was called 20 Cities, 20 Countries, 20 Games. I want to talk to you about being a global fan all over again and all of that. My first question though, like about actual basketball, your pinned tweet right now is a video that you did from Paris, France. And obviously, you just mentioned Victor Wembanyama, or we mentioned him off the air. We'll talk about him in a little bit as well. And then coming in this upcoming draft, you have Alexander Sarr, who I just need to know: is there a factory? Like, do they have a? Is it like? Are they just walking around like these giant 7 and almost 7.5 foot tall people who can dribble and shoot and all those things? Is that just an everyday thing?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be that way, doesn't it? Because, you know, I remember when Porzingis got drafted, which I guess is probably 10 years ago now. And he was the first guy that I think we've seen that tall who could shoot. Now, he doesn't have the handles that we've seen of Wembanyama so far. And, you know, Porzingis's career we're still in the process right now. I mean, I think he's actually been a pretty good addition to the Celtics, but of course it didn't work out in Dallas and Washington. No one goes to Washington to, you know, make their career, but he's got a great opportunity to, you know, build his reputation up. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, the Celtics easily one of the favorites to win the championship right now. But yeah, I mean, Wembanyama, you know, to seeing what he's got and the skills, the ability to play defense, to shoot, to dribble, to move the way he does. I mean, the potential is there that he could just be the most dominant player of all time. I mean, it's there. It's not, I don't think that's hyperbolic because we've never seen anyone with the finesse that he has. Now, obviously, he's not going to have the power of Shaq, likely at any point in his career because he's a thinner guy, but he can still be dominant because he just can't stop it. I saw
He
it
can
up
shoot.
close. Yeah, I saw it up close
Yeah.
here in Atlanta. Like some of the plays they were running were literally just throw the ball toward the rim. He's so long and tall, he grabs it and just drops it in there. So, but it's great. And I actually asked Greg Popovich about that at the pregame scrum. I said, in the past, a lot of Euros, with the exception of Luka Doncic, even going back to Nikola Jokic, he was a second-round pick. Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, these guys weren't number one picks like Wembanyama. And I think a big part of the reason is teams have still been reluctant to draft a non-US born player number one and say, he's our guy. Again, Doncic kind of being the exception in recent times. But Wembanyama was the number one pick,
Doncic
18
didn't
months.
even go first, though.
That's right.
Remember,
That's right.
Ayton went first. And the knock on Luka was that he didn't play against Duke. And it was like, Luka played against some good teams.
Well, Luka was EuroLeague MVP at 17 at Real Madrid. And, the people in Europe who I know were like, why would anyone have even considered anyone before Doncic as the number one pick when he was available? So again, those sorts of stigmas, though, I mean, they do take a while to shake off because you do have your Andrea Bargnanis, who was a decent player, just not a number one pick sort of caliber player over the years. It's great. I mean, basketball is still, a distant second to soccer in the world game, but I do believe that margin is getting thinner and thinner because basketball now is just everywhere for men and women, boys and girls, and it's so cool to see right now as well. I mean, who's going to win MVP again this year? It's likely to be Jokic or Embiid again, perhaps Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So another non-US, which would make it 6 years in a row, if that's the case, that an American-born player doesn't win MVP. And just, on those sorts of things, some of the videos I've put up, people have sort of, said, oh, America's still got the best players. And I'm like, there's no one disputing the NBA is still the best league in the world. No one would seriously think the EuroLeague or any Asian league is better. But the way that guys are coming in now to the NBA and dominating and playing just shows how the game is growing and people are getting, building up really, really good, high quality skills all around the world. And that's what it's about. The game is global. It's not, there's no sort of like, it's America's game and no one else can play it. It's like, hey man, it's for everyone. And you're seeing that in the results.
Yeah. This upcoming Olympics is going to be fascinating because, you've already had LeBron, you've already had Steph, you've already had KD mention that they want to play in it, following FIBA over the summer, the Lakers, Team USA, disappointed. It's just Freudian at this point. Like the Lakers disappointing is just a part of my lingo now. But over the summer you had, Team USA struggle in that tournament. And the fallout from that was that all of the, kind of A-team NBA superstars stepped up and said, okay, we all want to play in it now. And I'm really fascinated how that's going to go because people forget that Redeem team, the first iteration of it, they played against Spain in the final, and that remains to this day my favorite basketball game of all time. Wow. It was incredible. It was back and forth. You had the Gasols playing really well. Rudy Fernandez was on that Spanish team, and Ricky Rubio, I believe, was on it as well. And the global game has really grown, and I think, with LeBron and with Steph and with KD and with, all of the best guys from America going to Paris this year, potentially, Team USA would be, I think, the prohibitive favorite. But I think thered be legitimate value on some of the other teams and some of the other countries. Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, bar none. And the person that I guess technically Embiid might play for Team USA.
Well, I think he's already said yes. I think he actually accepted that invitation, which is interesting because that's where they got pounded in Manila. They were way too small. Jaren Jackson was there big. And so it was like, man, some of those bodies, especially against Lithuania, some of those big dudes, that's where now, ironically,
Durant is going to be huge too.
Yeah, it wasn't Lithuania who went on to win it, but that was the team that really sort of, upset the momentum the US had. And I think that's when they realized, like, man, we got to get some size because those big Eastern European dudes, who are just like, Jaren Jackson's a very good player. He's just not a banger. He's not he's not one of those guys. But this is absolutely what everyone should want, because you see after the US lose to Canada in the bronze medal game, and understandably and fairly, it's like, well, that wasn't the best USA team. True, 100% true. Fine. We want LeBron and Steph and KD and whoever else is Anthony Edwards. We want the best team there, because you're right. The US goes in absolute heavy favorite and should sweep the tournament, because if they don't, then it's like, then that conversation is like, see now how the game is not just totally dominated anymore, where these teams are intimidated by the US, and there's no then fallout in terms of the excuses like, well, we're not, it's Jaren Jackson playing instead of whoever the big does end up being. Yeah, exactly. And so this is what's great, and this is why for me, Olympic basketball and World Cup basketball, we want the best players from the best teams going out there and competing, so then we get an understanding of who is the best, because no one, I don't think, picked Germany with Schroeder and Daniel Tice to go on and win the gold medal. I mean, those guys, and I've seen it from watching Australia, when they put on their national jerseys, these guys become, I think I saw the Kobe Shaq, that sort of reveal meme of Tice and Schroeder, because that's what happens, and so I'm very excited. That was some of the best news I heard after that tournament, where LeBron, now I haven't actually seen him say it, but it was reported that he was like, I'm going to Paris. I know Kevin Durant, I've seen him say it, and I'm pretty sure Steph said he's in as well. So that's like great. And when you get those three guys committing, then everyone else who's going to want to be a part of it is like, right, well, if they're all going, then yes, I want to go. I think in the past, sometimes it's like, well, Miles Turner's playing, and people are like, I don't really want that. So I'm really happy that this has almost provoked this response, where it's gotten LeBron to say, oh, all right, I'm going to go and correct things in Paris. I mean, that's perfect for the game of basketball.
Yeah, that 2008 Redeem team, right? It came together because 2004 was such a disappointment, and Kobe was the one who kind of started the thing of like, all right, I'm going this time. LeBron, you're coming too. Melo, Dwight, and that team came together that way. And then 2012, I thought, was an even better collection of talent. And then, it kind of fell off again once we kind of saw, okay, when America sends our best guys, that's what it kind of looks like. But I don't think it's going to look that way this year. I legitimately don't. Hell, I think I've been begging for the All-Star game to be American guys against global guys, almost like a Ryder Cup, an annual Ryder Cup kind of thing, for golf fans out there. And I legitimately don't know how that game would go. And I probably think I would probably favor the international team if it came to that. And I'm curious. So like, you've had so much experience around the world, and like, is there like global pride in the way that the game is growing around the world? Obviously you have domestic pride in each of the countries that you go in, and the growth in their own specific country, but seeing the way that, like, last year, the top three candidates, it wasn't just that the MVP was internationally based. The top three finalists were all from abroad. And I think it's probably going to be the same thing again this year. Is there like a global pride that you've noticed in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. And the way that the game is played and taught, I think, is really key here, because in the Balkans, they almost never play pickup basketball in a 5-on-5 full court format. It's all 3-on-3 basketball. Now, 3-on-3 basketball, I've come to learn, is a better way of playing pickup basketball, because you're involved in almost every play, whether it's on offense or defense. If you're slacking on defense, you're going to get burned immediately. Your man's scoring, running to the hoop. And then on offense, the ball just has to keep moving because you keep moving. And that's the way to do it. And if you look at the results, like Serbia, there's only been 8 3-on-3 world championships. Serbia's won 6 of them. And if you look at guys, again, like Jokic, what stands out about Jokic? It's not that he's this big, muscly tough guy. It's this ability to pass and to find guys. Aaron Gordon sometimes, and Michael Porter Jr. Those guys still sometimes are walking around. All of a sudden, the ball's in their hand, and they're like, "Oh, I got to shoot. I got to dunk." You know, because Jokic exemplifies that. And I actually asked Jokic about that when the Nuggets were here in Atlanta, and he said, "I love 3x3 because that's what it does. Is it keeps everyone involved. You learn to pass. You learn to move. You don't necessarily have to be." The biggest, muscliest, most athletic guys. And that's still some of the criticism about Jokic. He's not that athletic. He can't jump. Yeah, but look how smart he is. Look how he's able to move the ball around. And so that, I think, is a bit of a symbol of what's coming, is that like these countries who just know how to pass the ball and are taught that from a young age, as they start making it to the NBA, that's just the way. If you think of guys, like Milos Teodosic, who came over, didn't really have the impact they were hoping for. Jasikevičius is another one from probably 15 years or so ago. But these guys in Europe are legends because of the way that they're able to play and really put their imprint on the game without scoring 30, 35 points. It's the way they manage the game, the way they pass the ball around. And so that, that's what I can see happening, is that the understanding of the fundamentals of the game, teamwork, ball movement, is going to sort of put the one-on-one stuff further and further behind, because so many of these teams, remember Andreas Obst as well for Germany, like just a shooter. Like there's going to be like 2 or 3 guys on each team who are just like lethal shooters, find the ball to them. They're going to be open because they're always moving. And that's where the game is going. And that's where I think the US has to really catch up. And Michael Malone, the Nuggets coach, also, I asked him about it when the Nuggets were here. And he sort of mentioned that. It's like these guys get taught from a very young age about movement and about where to be and about how to play, rather than just like work on your own individual skills. And it's great. And that's definitely what I'm noticing. In the Philippines, I was out there as well. It's the funny part about the Philippines is, genetically they've got some catching up to do in the rest of the world, because they're not known for being a tall nation. Right. And the jokes about it out there were hilarious. But the passion for the game, the way that they're playing, the way they're preparing and practicing, it's coming. I mean, it's still, we're probably still a couple of decades away from seeing, a real impact in the NBA, but the talent and the passion is there, and the understanding of how to play. And that's what's great. Like countries, everyone still wants to make the NBA. As I said, the NBA is the sort of goal for players to play. But we're also seeing now that you don't only have to make that goal, or if you don't make the NBA, you won't play high quality basketball. There's high quality leagues all around the world.
Yeah. And like the living situations I saw somebody was saying, I forget which player it was going and playing abroad in, I forget which city it was too. And somebody quote tweeted, like, I can't believe this guy has to go and play in this league or whatever. And it's like, this guy, I think it was Kendrick Nunn, who's going to go and play in like a gorgeous country.
I think he's in Monaco.
Yeah. It's like a gorgeous setting to play basketball. A lot of the European teams provide a personal chef. They provide housing. They provide all these things. So he's just basically making profits to go and live in Monaco for a while and play basketball. It's a pretty decent way to make a living. And I was also going to ask, because I grew up playing soccer, or I guess football. And Kobe would always rant and rave about the impact soccer should have on basketball. The nonverbal communications, the cutting off of the ball, the rotations defensively, and all of these things. And I really think that when you look at the way that basketball is trained abroad compared to here in the States, I think soccer has a huge impact on that, because that is the global game. And that's what everybody grows up playing. You have a lot more pickup soccer played, around the world than here at home. It's like I grew up, I would go down to Mexico to go visit family all the time. And there was always, a couple trash cans tipped over, and there was a bunch of us playing in these dirt lots. And that learning to play that way really impacted the way that I saw basketball, and the way that I love to watch the game played. What impact do you think soccer has on basketball abroad?
Well, no question that it has an impact because, you have to move in soccer. There's no posting up. There's no sort of like,
Yeah.
the game doesn't slow down. You've got to keep moving. You've got to run two positions. You've got to run to where the ball is. You have to understand the communication with your teammates. In fact, Thierry Henry, maybe my favorite football player of all time, just had a really good podcast talking about how when he joined Arsenal, he was a striker and he was fast and he liked the ball up front. And a couple of the guys, Robert Perez and Dennis Bergkamp, knew how to put the ball to him. But one of his teammates, Freddie Ljungberg, didn't know how to sort of get the ball to him. And Thierry went to his manager, Arsene Wenger, and said, he doesn't look for me. He doesn't find me. And Wenger said, well, you've got to sort of adjust to him, to his game. And so, again, that non-verbal sort of understanding of like, okay, for this player, I know where to run versus this player, it takes a different way of getting in his line of sight. And so that to me is again where it can transfer to basketball, where like I was just saying with Jokic and Aaron Gordon and those guys, the amount of times you see highlights and it's like Gordon's got his arms. Gordon's got his arms. There's a really good one of Michael Porter Jr. where he's walking at the 3-point line. All of a sudden the ball's just there. He launches up and knocks it in. He wasn't even paying attention, which is great. And I think that not only that, but going back to Kendrick Nunn as well, if you see now, and we're seeing a whole lot more of it, these highlights from EuroLeague games in Belgrade and Athens and Istanbul and places like that, and the crowds before the game, I mean, I'm talking, this is not like, a 2-point game in the fourth quarter. I'm talking like half an hour before the game. There's the sea of people. It's that wave of emotion and passion. That has got to be an incredibly intoxicating environment to play in. I've been to a couple of those games in Lithuania and Istanbul and Belgrade. And as a journalist, I guess, if you like, you can't help but feel energized and go, oh my God, this is great. And so if you're, Kendrick Nunn and you're like, I'm living in Monaco, I've got a chef here, cooking my food for me. I'll wake up and see one of the most beautiful scenes in the world. And then I go and play basketball in these cities where these fans are so incredibly passionate about the game. That's got to be, a whole lot of fun. And that's what I love about European basketball is just how the crowds get into it. And I think part of the reason, and this is another thing about the NBA, I think there's too many regular season NBA games. I think if you did cut the season back a bit, you would find more enthusiasm from fans. It's not going to happen. We all understand that. No owner's going to say, yeah, take 10 games off the schedule. I don't care. That's not going to happen. But I think that's why the EuroLeague is really thriving right now, is because you might only get Real Madrid versus Red Star Belgrade twice a year. So those games mean something. The fans know what's at stake. There's value. There's real understanding of, hey, we've got to win this game. And not only that, but I think that, there's historical rivalries there. There's cultural rivalries there, music, food, all those things come into play. So when it gets played out on the basketball court, it's a whole lot more than just who's going to win this game. There's personal bragging rights. There's like country bragging rights. The EuroLeague playoffs last year, they have the playoffs and then they have the Final Four. They were unreal. They were 3 of the 4 series went the distance, 5 games, and then the Final Four was incredible. So it's EuroLeague basketball is no longer like, oh, it's just where you go at the end of your NBA career. It's like, man, you go and you'll have an incredible life experience.
Yeah, we do fandom pretty poorly here in the States. We're so boring. There's no chance. There's no it's people are showing up midway through the first quarter.
Yeah.
You'll have fan bases that get known for it, but it's a thing everywhere. Like you go to a game basically anywhere, especially an NBA game where there are too many games in the regular season and people are still showing up, while when the teams like reach their 20-point mark or something like that. And even when they show up there, like it doesn't really get loud unless it's a great matchup, but it doesn't really get loud until the fourth quarter. Those games are loud throughout. An example of it was actually the World Baseball Classic. I don't know if you caught any of those games when they were played recently. And everybody that I spoke to who went, and I think they had some games in Miami. Yeah. And some of my friends who went to some of those games there in Miami said that, like, if baseball was like that all the time,
Yeah.
we would get so much more, like so many more people would go. You go to a baseball game now and like you almost feel like you're being told to be quiet. Like, shh, they're pitching, like it's
Well,
like,
yeah.
what are we
Yeah.
doing? I'm curious though, like that offers a pretty great segue here. Your pathway through, basketball fandom is, I think, completely unique. Obviously born and raised in Australia. You are a super fan from there. You're taking in highlights from VHS tapes that you had mentioned to me before,
Yeah.
and basketball cards that made their way out there as well. And you go through all of that, and you link up with. I think at the time they were still the Basketball Jones, right?
That's right. Yep.
And then become a bigger part of the show. And Basketball Jones becomes the starters. They are now No Dunks Inc., and you were there for that as well. And then you decide to embark on this project that you are currently killing it on. And so I'm curious, like, you went from global fan to a very unique perspective domestically as a fan, where you are on one of the biggest shows talking about the game on a daily basis. And then you step away from that to become a global NBA fan again. What is this stage of the experience like for you, being a fan as you're kind of participating in the global game as well?
Well, I think this goes back to where it started for me, which is, you see a basketball, you pick it up and you shoot it and you're like, oh, this is great. And you have fun. And it was
Mm-hmm.
so much about my early life that it wasn't just about playing basketball. It was how I made social interactions with friends, and as you get
Mm-hmm.
into your teen years, you start meeting girls at the basketball stadium. And, so all of a sudden, all of the birthday parties you're attending, all the people, it all sort of revolves around basketball. So it brought so many good memories and so many good experiences that being an analyst for 11 years was great. I didn't, not like doing it anymore, but I also was like, I want to try something else here and try to go back to almost where it began for me. And so that's what I have found traveling around the world, playing basketball. It's like, oh my God, what that experience I had as a kid feels now the same when I turn up in South Africa or Tokyo or Mexico City, where I was recently. That was an incredible experience because when you step on the basketball court, the language isn't necessarily verbal language isn't that important. It's more about the non-verbal communication of like, all right, I'm gonna sort of teach you some things about basketball. Then we're going to play together and we're going to have fun. And then afterwards we might eat a local dish. We might have a beer, and then you sort of get to know people a little bit. And that's what I'm really finding is fulfilling now. That when I first set off on this goal, it was like to play basketball in cool cities and have a great time. Now I'm like, oh, I want to host a clinic with some local kids so I can, give them some of the passion that I have for the game and see if it sort of sparks something with them that for the most part, they already love the game anyway. And so for someone to come and give them attention, and I often have t-shirts and prizes and things like that to give away as well. So people have this really fun experience. And then maybe there'll be those people a bit like myself where they're like, oh, I want to see where basketball can take me, because you can go anywhere in the world and play and meet people and have fun. And so, I'm really enjoying the challenge of trying to play around the world. And I've been really humbled by the support I've received and the amount of people who have said, oh, come to my country, come to my city, come out and play here and come and do it. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is kind of what I was hoping for, that people were like, I can see the passion and love of playing basketball that you have. I feel the same way about it. Now I want to show off my city or my country to you. And it's awesome. I mean, I'm still kind of figuring exactly what's going on. And I go in often not knowing exactly what I'm going to shoot, what story I'm going to tell. And sometimes it takes me a few months to sort of go through my footage and go like, what's the story here? What can I share with people that they're going to get from it? But now that I've had a bit more experience, I'm like, oh, okay. It's not about like me playing basketball. I think has a sort of shelf life. It's like, okay, we've seen you play. Great. What I'm trying to do now is like, hey, here's the story from where I was. Here's the story of the people I met and what happened and the experience. And that seems to be, resonating with my audience. People are like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that. I want to go and play there. I want to have that experience that you did. And so that then sort of encourages and motivates me to try more things and not the common things of like, well, just go and play, in Toronto. I had a great run there, but you want to stretch the legs a little bit further and be like, I want to go to a country I've never been to before, in a city I've never been to. I don't know anybody, and see if I can make that happen. And those experiences have been just exhilarating. Like, I was in Tokyo. I had 18 hours in Tokyo. I had a layover on the way back from Manila. And I messaged a friend who follows me, and we follow each other, I should say, on social media, Rio Anishi. And I said, he's in Tokyo. I said, hey, is there any chance I can get a run together here? Can you organize this within 24 hours? And he's like, well, I'll try. Anyway, he couldn't because it was to such short notice. It was in the middle of summer. But he said, listen, I'll take you to the court where there's usually people playing. I went there and had a great run. And one of the guys playing there, Toshiro, this guy, was incredible to watch. And it was just so rewarding for me, because that's how I believe life's best experiences come about, when it's like you don't know what's going to happen. You can't plan for it. You just turn up. Mark Twain, I think, said 90% of life is just show up, and see what happens. And so those experiences really fuel more ideas of, like, you don't have to plan everything. Get a bit of an idea of what you're going to do, and then go and try to make something happen. And it's very, very exciting when you come away from those experiences. Like, I just had an awesome time. And Toshiro especially, I like to bring him up because I believe basketball, like soccer players, like when you watch Messi or Ronaldo, they're artists, they're geniuses, they're painters in the way that they're like, there's always something. Like, it doesn't matter how many goals you've seen of Messi, the next one seems to be like, oh my God, can you believe he did that? I haven't seen that one before. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
And I think the same with basketball. I mean, some of the best, things we see on social media are when Kyrie does those moves where he breaks down, guys, and the ball's like, how did he even think about what he was doing? But it was improvisation, a lot of it. It's just like, I'm just trying to get to the basket. And Steph and, LeBron and Michael, like, everyone has had something that you just look at and we're just like, oh my God, this is captivating. And so when I get to see those experiences in person without planning for them, without it being a big setup of like, all right, we're going to watch this guy, that's when you feel like really satisfied that I'm, I don't know if I'm on the right path, but I'm on a path somewhere.
Yeah. And you're liking the path, and that's all that matters.
Love it.
The being a fan in the way that you are, with a little bit more distance from it, I don't think it was the last time. I think it was the first pod that you and I recorded. You had said that there were aspects of the NBA that were kind of grinding on you a little bit. Load management, trade rumors, and all that stuff. We are in the middle of trade season right now. It's really refreshing to not talk about it. It's really nice, actually. But like, being able to now have a little bit more distance, has it kind of reinvigorated some of your fandom in the NBA?
Yeah, it has, because I can pick and choose when I want to watch games. I think that was probably a part of it, is when you're an analyst, and as you know yourself, you can't just decide, well, you know what, I'm taking a couple of weeks off the Lakers here. If you want to build up your integrity and your credibility, you've got to go through every game, and if the Lakers get blown out 3 games in a row, it's kind of like, oh my God, are we going to, LeBron's out now, Anthony Davis is out. How are we going to talk about it when they lose by 30 points to this team and then they blow out the next team by 30 points? Those games, there's not a lot of meat on the bone to talk about, because it's like, I don't know how you sort of can analyze. It's
182.
It's
like it's 1 of 82.
So now, like Christmas Day, for example, I tuned into the Warriors and the Nuggets. I'm like, great, I want to watch these 2 teams. And it was a pretty good game. And at the end of it, you're like, I'm glad I can enjoy watching it without feeling that I have to sometimes, what's your take from it? What sort of story can you take from one game that is supposed to sort of, be broader in the sense. Sometimes like, hey, that was just a good game and that's it. There's no need to dig deep into every single game and analyze it in a way that's like that tells a bigger picture. Sometimes it's just you watch the game, great, and then you move on. And so now, my nights when I get home, I work from home, but when my boys come home from school, I'm a dad until I go to bed. And then if there's a game I do want to watch, I'll watch it. But if there's not, I won't. And if there's something, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, I wanted to watch that game last night, whatever it was. It's like you can watch it back on the recap on YouTube and things like that. So I enjoy because it wasn't that I didn't love basketball or I fell out of love. I think I just fell out of like, oh, it's March and I'm watching the Pistons and the Hornets,
Wizards. Yeah.
yeah, and you're just like, oh, this is just not boring. It's not fun. And I check the NBA app every day, and some things that still concern me about the league is when you see like 146 to 115, and that's not just one game. That's like there's 4 games that have a margin of that big. I'm like, this is like scoring is fun, but not when it's like a team's putting up 150 points and they're blowing out the other team by 40. Like, if you're a fan, are you really getting that much out of it? Really? I mean, are you going, oh, that was great, we smoked that team by 40 in January? Like, no. Now, of course, in soccer and European basketball, they still have bad games and blowouts. Of course, that happens everywhere. But in the NBA, there's still far too many meaningless games. And the in-season tournament, I give Adam Silver complete credit for trying something. I would still make it different. I wouldn't do it quite the way he did, but of course, I think these things are going to evolve. And also, the biggest area I think the NBA needs to change and fix is the draft, because I'm more and more now like, okay, you cannot reward teams for mailing it in. That's just the worst thing you can do. You've got to punish those teams instead, because that's what happens in soccer. If you have a bad season, you get relegated. You don't finish last and they say, okay, you can now have the best player who's available. That's your choice. Instead, it's like the punishment is severe. And that's what I would do with the draft. If you finish last with the worst record or the second worst, you don't get a draft pick, or you pick last in the draft, rather than, hey guys, we mailed it in and now we might get Wembanyama. Like that to me is like, no, you should be the absolute last team that gets a chance to say. And then in order to make the draft actually a real draft and a lottery, is like every team has the same lottery odds, so that you're not having, and if that means the Lakers get the first pick in the draft next year, or the Nuggets as the current champions, fine. That's the way it goes. But when when I've watched teams in the past, and the Sixers did it there under the Sam Hinkie era, where they're not even trying for the entire season, and they get Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and Jahlil Okafor and those guys. Now, maybe they didn't all work out, but the point is like Sam Hinkie was right. He was strategically going, well, I'm going to get the number 1 pick. And the NBA didn't really correct it. I know they've made a few tweaks, but get rid of that. If you finish last or second last, bad luck. You don't get a draft. You don't get a first round pick.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, the NBA has an issue with team brands, basically, where like you're rooting for laundry essentially, and you never know who's going to be on your team. And like the Lakers this year entered the season knowing essentially, and fans who've been paying any attention knew that D'Angelo Russell was probably going to get traded, before February's trade deadline. And I do kind of wonder if they completely flatten those lottery odds. At that point, you don't want to trade first round picks. Like you can't, because there's a chance you could get the top pick in the draft. And I do kind of think that all of this player movement has actually taken a toll on the league. And, because in the NFL, quarterbacks there stay with their teams their entire careers. There is never any, like almost never any rumors of a prime quarterback getting ready to leave or demanding a trade or anything like that. They wind up and I think that really helps the strength of the league, that those fans know, so long as I have that guy, I have a chance here. It's just a matter of trying to get that kind of a player. And I think the NFL or the NBA is kind of the opposite of that, where you have, the Spurs right now. I think Wemby will probably stick it out a little bit longer with the Spurs than most superstars or whatever. But it's always in the back of their minds, like, when are the jersey swaps with the Lakers going to start? When are we going to start, hearing those rumors that he wants to be in a bigger market, and all of that. So I do agree that it can take a toll, and the tanking especially is just, it can't be healthy for a league. And the NBA keeps on, like, they keep using franchise sale prices as a means to say how healthy the league is. And the reason that those sale prices keep going up is because owners know I can't fail. I'm
Yeah.
buying this thing that I literally, like, there's no punishment to being bad.
Well, that's
Sign
right.
me up.
Yeah, and again, that's what I've just come to learn over the years is like, yeah, look at in if you follow any European soccer league, the last 2 months of the season for the teams that are trying to avoid relegation, they compete. Their fans come out. They're hanging off every single goal because it could be the difference between being relegated down a
Yeah.
division and staying up in the big top flight. And that's where the NBA needs to at least improve the stakes and the value of each game by saying, okay, we don't want teams where they look up and they go, you know what, we're not going to make the play-in tournament and we're certainly not going to make the playoffs. So let's see if we can now bottom out, rest our stars, and increase our lottery odds. If you're the sponsors and the fans and you're like, well, why am I taking my kid to see a game where the team's not even really competing? The team's trying to lose. That just, to me, is where it's wrong. You want instead teams like, I'm just going to hypothetically throw the Bulls in there, say, there is no way we want to miss out on a draft pick this season. We are competing every single game because we've got to get out of that sort of danger zone where you don't get a draft pick. And that, to me, is going to be more significant than the play-in tournament where, I know the Heat sort of last season had the miracle run of making the play-in tournament and going to the finals. That was unusual. And so I think you can keep the play-in tournament, but what you've got to try to do is make sure that, as the weeks and the months die down of the season, as they wind down, you haven't got 6 to 8 to 10 teams saying, we don't want to win. We want to get in that 14% chance of getting the number 1 pick because we might get Wembanyama. And that's a problem. But again, Adam Silver, I think he deserves credit for trying. He's tried the in-season tournament. I think that has been mostly successful. The play-in tournament, he's trying to generate interest. But the problem with the play-in tournament is you can't play 82 games and then say, well, now we're playing for games that have stakes for these teams. Like what's the point of the first 82 then? You know what I mean? Like you've got to make players feel, hey, if we drop 2 or 3 games in a row here, we could really find ourselves in trouble. So we've got to go out there and compete. And look, there's no perfect system for sure, but that number 1 draft pick should never, ever again be an incentive for teams to be like, I'm not competing this season because we want to look ahead to next season.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the stuff that's gone on with like even the Spurs this year where they aren't playing.
Yeah.
It's not Tyus Jones. Is it Tyus Jones?
Yeah.
And they they've been playing Sohan at point guard and it's been this disaster and they're going to stick with it because they could get Sarr in the upcoming draft. And if you have Sarr and you have Wemby, then what does anybody ever do against you? But let's talk about your project here, 20 cities, 20 countries, 20 games. I've had an absolute blast just watching your updates on YouTube and on Instagram and on Twitter. Your pinned post or your pinned video on YouTube right now is a conversation that you had with the one-armed Mamba. Just give me an update, give me a plug on how everything's going.
It's every day is a new challenge because I'm a one-man band here. So I am really trying to do all my own marketing, my own production, my own emailing, my own PR, everything like that. So it's a ton of work. And there are days where you're like, man, I wish I had the resources to be able to recruit a few people to help me out here. Not quite at that stage yet, but trying to really, my focus right now is just to build the audience. If you build up a bigger audience, you're more likely to attract sponsors and investors, and potentially, ultimately, the goal remains to get this on Netflix at some point. So if I've got a bigger audience, that becomes an easier conversation to have. But again, as I was saying before, it's so fun waking up going like, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen today. I'm not sure what call I'm going to get, what email I'm going to receive. And that probably is different to what I was feeling in the last season or so there, on the No Dunk Show, where you wake up and you're like, oh my God, am I going to talk about, I keep throwing James Harden's name out there unfairly. He's a great player, but, not necessarily a fun guy to talk about day in and day out. Whereas now, I'm like, man, I might be getting a call today from someone in Thailand. I might be getting a call from someone in, Kenya again, in South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, people saying, hey, we want to talk about you coming out. We want to, try to make those things happen. And so those sorts of days are really exciting. And then you get an opportunity to meet people like the video you refer to there on my YouTube with Kat Tan, the one-arm mamba. This girl has the most inspiring story I think you could ever find, because as a 10-year-old girl, she was involved in a serious accident and lost her arm. Her arm was severed. And, you think about all the things that we complain about in life with our health and things like, imagine being 10 years old and you lose your arm. Now, you could sort of think maybe someone going through a trauma like that is now, a drug addict or has serious, substance abuse problems trying to handle it. She's the most energetic, just a great person. And she plays basketball. She's happy. She doesn't want any pity or sympathy or anything like that. She's like, hey man, it happened, but you know what? This is my life now, and I'm just going to go and live it as best I can. And she got to meet Kobe 3 times. And if you've seen the entire video, what she does at the end of that blows Kobe's mind. Like hits this shot at Kobe's camp that Kobe, being Kobe, he wasn't doing her a favor or anything like that. He threw out a challenge, a Kobe challenge that he wanted, that was genuine and authentic. And she absolutely nailed this challenge. And Kobe was just, blown away by it. So when you see people like that, and Kat's a small girl, she's only, she's not a big, like, super athlete or anything like that. She just loves basketball. She works her ass off every single time she goes out there to play. She keeps herself in great shape. And when she does play, if you don't know her and you say, well, this person's, got an obvious physical limitation, they're missing a limb. If you take it easy on her, she'll call you out. She'll say, hey, listen, play. I'm here to play. You play. And so I didn't even know about Kat until I got to the Philippines. Once I met her and started talking to her, learned more about her story, I was like, oh my God, she's an inspiration. And I hope she comes to the United States. She was talking about trying to get here because she really wants to meet Shaq. And I said to her, well, I can't promise anything, but I can promise you this. I will do everything I can for you to meet Shaq, because he would love that story, and obviously the connection to Kobe there. So these are the sorts of things I was saying before. There was no way of knowing this was going to happen until I got to Manila and until I got to meet Kat and heard her story. And as soon as I started talking to her and heard her story, I said, all right, I got to shoot a video here, because more people need to know about her and what she's overcome. And I'm very, very proud to call her a friend now. We're social media friends, and we are often messaging with each other. And she posts a lot of her basketball videos. I'm like, you're killing them out there, Kat. She loves it. And it's now I'm like, we've got to get you here to the United States, because more people need to know about her and what she's overcome and how she lives her life now.
Yeah, it's an incredible conversation. It's just one of the several great pieces that you've done on this journey. Again, it's 20 cities, 20 countries, 20 games. You're 18 of 20 right now.
Actually, 19. 19 because I was in New York just last week. Yeah. I'm a little slack. I haven't sort of updated that too much yet, but
I saw the New York update. Yeah.
So the US has been ticked off, but ticked off in a checked off sense, I should say.
Well, sometimes it's usually pretty ticked off.
Sometimes that's where the language communication breakdown. Depending on which country I'm in, ticked off means something completely different. But the thing is, I'm obviously here in the United States. There's a million other courts I would like to hit, and I plan on getting to those as the journey unfolds and continues here. But 19, so 20. I can give you a little bit of breaking news. Looks very likely that Brazil will be number 20 here in about 2 months' time. Yeah, working on a deal there. Looks like it's going to happen. So I can't think of a better place in the world than Rio de Janeiro to celebrate a milestone. So that's where number 20 is going to be.
Yeah, they love. I mean, they love sports down there. Like Brazilians with obviously with soccer and all that, the beautiful game and the way that they feel about basketball, right? Leandro Barbosa is I think probably the most famous Brazilian basketball player ever.
Well, I would say probably Oscar Schmidt, even though he never played in the
Yeah.
NBA. Oscar was in the draft of '84, but that was when the rules were different about playing in the Olympics. And I believe he actually is still the Olympic record point scorer, I believe. Maybe Melo overtook him at some point, but yeah, Oscar Schmidt, I think, is probably. I mean, Leonardo, obviously, here in the United States, he had a lot of success with the Suns and the Bulls. Was he in the Bulls? No, Suns,
Warriors.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'll keep an eye out for that. Anything else that you want to plug before we get you out of here?
Just follow along and let me know where you want me to play, and I'm going to try to make it happen because that's honestly how this is being grown, is by people being involved. It's not just about me turning up and then hoping people will be there. It's going because people are going to say, hey, come and play in my city, play in my court. Outdoor courts is where I prefer. New York in January, I had to make an exception. It was
it's a little chilly.
A little chilly, yeah.
Well, if you're ever in Austin, or if we can, I know that the NBA is taking a bit of a foothold here. The Spurs actually come up and play a little more often. There's some cool courts. Austin, the city, is just a beautiful city. So if you're ever in the area, let me know, and I'll for sure go and check it out. And I don't know if I'll play. I'm a little round at this point, but I'll definitely check it out.
We can hide you in the corner and just shoot some threes. How about that?
As long as it's 5-on-5, I can go chill in the corner.
Yeah.
3-on-3, you're screwed. Like if it's 3-on-3, you're in trouble. And if I'm one of your three, Leigh, this has been an absolute blast. It always is. Thank you very much for making time, and best of luck and congratulations on this project. It blew me away when you first told me about it and when I first heard about it. And every time I hear about it, I get all the more inspired by it.
Anytime, Anthony. Always fun chatting with you too, man.